Hey there, it's 3 o'clock on a Tuesday, and we all know what that means. Another riveting episode of Behind Breaking Bond. And someone just pointed out that this is the last Breaking Bond of October, didn't you?
I did, man. I am so astute. That's why I have an advanced degree, so I can be able to cognizantly look at a calendar and go, next week is Halloween, because that's a big month for me.
You like Halloween, huh?
Ah, man, are you kidding me? So I'll throw this out to the audience here. Someone asked me, hey, Andy Kahan, what are you going to be dressed up as Halloween? I said, I'm thinking about going as a PR bond. But I'm trying to think of how I can actually do this. So if you're out there going, gee, a PR bond, that's really cool. Maybe there's a plastic mask that says a PR bond with stripes on it with an X. So
did you introduce yourself?
I did. I said,
you didn't say your name.
I said, people said, hey, Andy Kahan. So I'm alluding to the fact
he did not say that.
There's too many Andys here.
This is true. This is
true. We have another Andy?
Yes, we do. Hey, we've got a total of 3 judicial candidates that we're going to be talking to on this riveting episode of Behind Breaking Bond. Introduce yourself, young lady.
I'm Andrea Beall, and I am the Democratic nominee for the 185th District Court.
Tell us about what you do now.
You've been here before.
Yes, you have.
I have been
You're
a couple of
veteran.
times.
Yes.
If someone can be.
We're not real sure why she agreed to come back. We're not going to judge her for that. Seriously, tell us about yourself.
I get it, Judge.
So currently, I am a chief prosecutor in the Child Fatality Division of the District Attorney's Office here in Harris County, where I prosecute cases where children under 14 have been murdered in an abusive situation. And that's the only type of case that I currently prosecute. I've previously done capital murders, aggravated robberies, child sexual abuse cases. I also adjunct at South Texas College of Law and teach their phases of criminal advocacy course. And I'm a Fourth Amendment instructor at the Police Academy.
It sounds
in your spare time.
Really.
What spare time?
I mean, everything that you just described. I mean, those sounds like that. All of that sounds like good qualities and knowledge to have to be a judge.
Yes, I definitely have dedicated my career to criminal law.
Why did you decide to run for the 185th?
So I didn't agree with how the court was being run. I thought that the community could be safer if the docket was managed more efficiently, as well as different ways that victims were being treated in the court. Wanted to make sure that everybody had a fair shot on both sides, and also that people were being held accountable to their bond conditions.
You've really been kind of busy. You were saying earlier, you basically started running last May. You had to do the primary, then you were in a runoff election.
Yes, it's been a busy year.
What's that been like for you?
It's been challenging, but I appreciate that voters are willing to listen to the issues and judge people based on their individual records.
What are you hearing from folks when you go out and talk to people?
I think a big issue is for the local level elections is crime, and crime is a nonpartisan issue. I mean, people, whether you're Democrat or Republican, care about crime in Houston. And so I just hope that people are judging each candidate based on that candidate's record. And
we've talked about this a lot. This is probably the first time in recent memory, at least, that criminal district court judge races have gotten so much attention. And I mean, let's be honest, the reason is because of the revolving door at the criminal courthouse. I mean, we do breaking bond because judges have basically let repeat violent offenders out multiple times on multiple bonds to reoffend.
Well, you've seen billboards around the town. You see everybody talking about judicial races that they've never talked about before. The other thing that's going to put more of an emphasis is you can't vote straight ticket anymore. So you got to actually go in there and vote for candidates. And I know people that are going to be voting for X candidates, and they're going to be split votes because they're looking for the right person. And you're exactly right, Andrea. And I'll call you Andy because I'm an Andy here as well. And I've said this repeatedly. I don't understand why public safety has become so partisan. Right. I can't grasp that concept. I've been doing this for 30 some odd years, and no one cared, particularly victims of crime, whether they were Democrat, Republican, Independent, or whatever. So I think this is actually good that people get to hear from judicial candidates they've never heard from before, because it's just been an afterthought, or you just vote straight party, or gee, that name looks good, I'll vote for you. So,
And one thing too, I mean, keep in mind, if these races are going to be real far down on the ballot, so you're going to the polls and you're voting because you want your voice heard. Well, you need to just make sure that you go all the way down the ballot and you place a vote for every single race that you're looking at. And just at 1:30 this afternoon, they were having a press conference called Stop the Judges, and again, I can never remember a time where I've actually seen television ads for criminal district court judge races. Can you remember that in the past?
No, and my memory is far longer than yours.
Yes, it is.
So, you go past.
I don't remember yesterday, so you.
No, for 30 some odd years.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like this. And we were talking earlier, I mean, you have the case that was on the news last week with the mother and the 5-year-old, who just an absolutely gruesome, horrific
Terrible case.
that you have to, and these are cases that you have to look at almost on a daily basis on that.
Yes, yeah. And that's why it's so important to look at each candidate and see what level of cases have they handled. For instance, I'm the only candidate in my race that has prosecuted these high-level offenses. And we really need people in these places of power who have experience. And so, when I see those signs in people's yards that say, don't vote for Democratic judges, that's a calling card for me, because I'll go knock on it and say, let me tell you why you need to reconsider.
Yeah, it's a crime issue. It doesn't really matter. Democrat, Republican, that part of it doesn't matter. Martha Medina's sister at the 1:30 press conference, perfect example. She said, I'm a Democrat, but she basically blames Judge Hillary Unger for her sister's death, for letting the guy out repeatedly. And she said, I'm going to vote for Republican judges. But you've got to go in and you've got to look at names. Don't look at parties. Look at the names. And remember, in tonight's Breaking Bond and in next week's Breaking Bond, we're going to go over the 6 judges that we featured the most during the segments, to kind of remind folks about their track record. What do you want everybody to know, Andrew, when they go to vote?
I want them to know that I am where the experience lies in this race when it comes to criminal law. My opponent primarily does civil, family, and contract law, whereas I have dedicated my entire career to fighting for justice for cases on behalf of the state of Texas.
And you've told us in the past, you do not believe in this idea of repeatedly letting somebody out multiple times on bond when you don't really have, when you can say, hey, you violated your bond and you're going to go to jail. Now you're not going to get out again.
Right. And I think that everybody needs to be aware, and I know we've been talking about a lot about the different constitutional caveats when it comes to setting bonds. I get calls sometimes actually where people are like, I can't believe that you let this person have a bond as the prosecutor on a case. And it's because they're constitutionally entitled to
Yes,
one.
they are.
But
yes.
That being said, when you do have somebody who is violating the contract they have with the court, they need to be held accountable.
Yeah, I think everyone would agree that the Constitution, when it comes to that, is correct. Everyone has the right to get a bond, to be on bond awaiting trial. But bond was not meant to be on bond for 5-6 years. The system itself is not set up to even handle that, is it?
Right. And that's why you do need to look at individual judges, because many of the judges are doing a great job at working the backlog down, at making sure that people go through the system efficiently and fairly. And so I just ask people do their research.
Yeah, please. When it comes to the criminal district court judge races, just take a little time. Look at what we've done. I think the police union has a lot of stuff on their page, but yeah, just take time to look at these races and find out who the people running are. And more importantly, look at what the current judge has done. And if you agree, or disagree with decisions that those judges have made.
So I
Correct?
think in the cases, in the candidates that we're talking to today, if I am correct, none of them are running, one of them's running against an incumbent, but two are not, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I will say for the viewers that don't just assume that the Democrat on your ballot is an incumbent.
Right. Thank you for bringing that up. That obviously, Judge Long, well, you beat him in the primary. So yeah, you're looking at a race here where there's not an incumbent.
It's an open bench.
Correct.
It's an open bench, right?
That was very good, Andrew.
I know, man. My 30 some odd years of experience finally paid off, man.
Finally, I've waited a long time for this moment. Andrea, thank you so much.
Thank y'all so much for having me.
We're going to bring in another judicial candidate. This is Tami Pierce.
Hold on, before we do that, this gives me a quick minute to promote the
A commercial.
fear-mongering coffee that can be purchased at King Harvard's Imperial Coffee. No proceeds go to me. That's on the record.
None.
None.
Zero.
10-second sound bite there.
There you go. Tami Pierce, tell us about yourself.
Well, I have been in public service for 30 plus years. I started as a police officer. From a police officer, I did narcotics investigations, was promoted to sergeant, and also did hostage negotiation as a
Wow.
police officer. So I've dedicated my life to public service.
And then you became an attorney.
Then I became an attorney. After becoming an attorney, I did some criminal defense work here in Harris County for a number of years, and then got hired as a prosecutor, and which is what I'm doing now.
I've always thought that's the best attorney is an attorney that's they've been on both sides of it, right?
I think so. I think it makes me more well-rounded. From a police officer, I saw one side. I saw what crime does, the aftermath of crime, because we're going to the crime scenes. And then as a defense attorney, you're looking at that person as more of an individual, where you may not have seen him when you arrested him or anything like that, because he was somebody that just did something really bad. And then now as a prosecutor, I'm again defending the victims of crime.
What made you decide to run for the 180th?
I think that the incumbent, I am one of the ones running against an incumbent judge, has had some, I disagree on some of his decisions on letting out at least 2 or 3 murderers that I know of on low or no bonds. I don't think that should be happening in murder cases. I think they have to be held accountable. There should be some amount to be paid to make sure that maybe that he's got something in the game. He's got a little skin in the game, or maybe somebody in his family's got some skin in the game, so that they can make sure that he's going to show up to court.
And that can make a big difference, doesn't
Absolutely.
it? Yeah.
Absolutely.
We've, Judge Deshaun Jones, he's been featured in several breaking bond reports. And as you pointed out, there's documents show that there have been times when he's actually granted a personal reconnaissance bond for a murder defendant.
That was the first ones that was done right during I remember when COVID hit.
Yeah.
And they were going to start letting everyone out, and I believe that particular judge jumped immediately on it, because there were several defendants that were actually on bond for getting PR bonds for murder.
This is the first time you've ever ran for an office.
It is. I never thought I'd get into politics, but I was sitting at home and seeing on the news over and over again that these.
You were watching Fox News, right?
I was absolutely watching Fox News. It's one of the stations that I watch. So, it's disheartening to me for somebody who has been doing this for so long to see criminals, especially violent repeat offenders, to get out again and again, and there's no accountability. And in the penal code, in chapter 1, one of the first things it says, safety of the community. That's what established the penal code. And I don't see that happening. I don't see the judges, especially the one I'm running against, looking at the safety of the community as a priority, and it should be safety of the community first, and then you look at the other, aspects.
You're not the first candidate that we've talked to that has said, I never ever thought about running for any kind of office, but I'm watching what's going on, and I just feel like I've got to try to do something to change it.
Correct. That's my core is public
So
service.
what
and
happens
safety
when
of the
you
community.
decide to run? So you decide to run, then what happens? We just go in and say, I'm gonna want to run?
I made a phone call. And I said, is it too late to run for judge? Are y'all looking for anybody? And they said, we absolutely are. Tell me your background. And I told them my background from being a police officer to a sergeant, and then being a criminal defense attorney, and then prosecutor. And in prosecutor, I have prosecuted all kinds of crime. I've prosecuted the continuous sexual violator, homicides, whatever it may be. So I feel like I have the resume to do it. I just never thought I would get in politics.
Is it like we all kind of picture what something would be like. Is it what you thought it would be like to run for an office or no?
Well, I've never run, so I really don't have anything to compare it to.
Right.
But I mean, it hasn't been as bad as I thought it would be.
What do you hear from people? What do they tell you, or what are they concerned about?
I think the majority of people are concerned about the crime, and I mean, they should be. It's to the level that I've never seen it before. It's the fact that they're allowing repeat offenders, which they could hold for no bond, given the violence of the crime, the being on bond and then violating again. You can follow the Constitution and follow the law.
Right, and that appears to be the difference of ideologies that we're seeing.
Yes.
We're seeing candidates, they're saying that you can, and you see the judges they're saying, no, you can't.
Well, and historically, we saw that, right? I mean, this all started in 2019, basically, where we started seeing this pattern.
Mhm.
You go back historically with judges, the Constitution's been the same,
It has.
right? They've all been under the same Constitution. Yes, everybody has a right to bond, but judges in the past, it's like, hey, you violated your bond 3 different times, 4 different times. I've had it with this. You're going to go back to jail, right? I mean, you have the right as a judge to say that.
Correct. If they're on a felony bond and they go out and commit another felony, they can be held. You can increase their bond, but if they're getting more violent, then you're probably going to want to hold them on a no bond.
And every single person that's on bond, everybody has one condition that's the same, and that's don't break the
Don't
law.
commit any other laws
Right.
against the state,
So-
or any other state, actually. So,
Yeah, yes, yeah. So tell everybody out there why they should vote for you, Tami.
well, I believe I have the experience. I believe in community safety, the safety of the community, and the citizens of Harris County deserve better than what they're getting. And I want to be fierce on crime, so vote Pierce.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you
We've
very
got
much.
one
We
more
have
candidate.
a few viewers that want to thank you for all the hard work that we take for granted. Chris says, Facebook user says, you have a lot of experience and the heart of the people.
Thank you very much, Chris. I appreciate that.
Well, and you're the first candidate, I think, that you were a police officer and then you became, I mean, that's really impressive that you basically have done every single aspect of law enforcement. Not a whole lot of people can say that. I didn't
Thank
even
you.
embarrass
You
you.
need her to hang around because we let Andy go.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you'll stick around for us, won't you?
Sure,
Okay.
absolutely.
We have one more
We can
candidate.
entice you with Pez.
I like the dispenser better.
Joining us now is Heather Hudson. Hi,
Hi,
Heather Hudson, and you're running for,
I am the Republican candidate for the 208
Tell-
district court.
tell us about your background.
I've been a prosecutor for 14 years, 4 in Hidalgo County, which is on the border. And then for the last 10 years, I've been in Houston with the Harris County District Attorney's Office.
What made you decide to run for the 208th?
Well, I think that one of the most important jobs that a judge has is taking into account the safety of the community, whether that's in determining the amount of bail or in sentencing decisions. But that is something that the judge should take into consideration. And I think many of the courts right now, unfortunately, are being very reckless when taking those decisions into account. So the 208th, I thought, was one of the worst offenders, and I thought I could do much better.
What do you hear when you go out knocking on doors and just letting people, making people aware you're run?
Well, having been a prosecutor for 14 years, this is the first time I can ever remember where just average people have approached me and expressed concern about crime. Typically, this is not something that's on anyone's radar, but people have expressed outrage about what's happening. And I think there has to be a change.
I mean, there's a lot of people, I think people are really starting to take a good hard look at these races during this election.
It's the #1 issue amongst people in Houston and Harris County, and it's crime and public safety. So you ran in the 208th,
Yes.
and the incumbent judge got knocked off in the primary. So basically, kind of like our first guest here, it's kind of an open bench,
Yeah.
which is kind of rare that you have something like that happen.
Mm-hmm.
So is this something that you thought this would be what it would be like, or did you think that, oh my God, what have I got myself into with this?
Every day I think, what have I got?
Can I change my mind now?
No, it's this is not something that was on my radar beforehand. I really like being a prosecutor. I think it's the best job that anybody could have, being an advocate for victims. But unfortunately, things have gotten to the point where I think I could better serve the community as a judge. So it's definitely been interesting to run. It's been harder in many aspects, but fortunately, I'm one of the few candidates who also has a prosecutor that they're running against, which I'm generally in favor of.
You know, one thing too, when you look at the current judges and you look at their backgrounds, a lot of them they don't have a past with a lot of trial experience or a lot of trial work where they've, actually been in trial settings. This goes on to a stupid question, but why is that important if you're running to be a judge?
Well, I mean, obviously bail reform is the main issue that people think about. But as an appellate attorney, one of the things that's on my radar is that I see how often cases get reversed because of a mistake that the judge made. Unfortunately, that happens quite often. And a lot of times it's just because they don't know what the law is. So I'll see judges making the exact same mistakes year after year. So in addition to just having trial experience, it's also good if you have experience looking at the law from the aspect of what is the judge supposed to do in this situation? Because a lot of times trial attorneys aren't thinking about that. They're thinking about, what do I have to do to get this item of evidence admitted?
Yeah.
They're not thinking about what type of sua sponte instructions is the court required to give? What should the jury charge look like to make sure that this doesn't get reversed? So that's a secondary concern to bail, obviously, but it's
No,
also
I can tell you, for someone who's worked with survivors of homicide for 30 years, that is one of the utmost things that we talk about is post-conviction advocacy, and the fact that you do not want to go through this. You want to make sure everything is done properly, because the last thing you want is to end up back in trial. And I'll just say, see David Temple, for example, see Robert Frada, who's been on death row since 1996, and that was as a retrial. No. So it's vitally important that you do have good people on the bench, so you don't put families, particularly homicide victims, through this ordeal again.
I mean, the judge could make just kind of one bad call or one bad decision, and then it's like all of that was for naught, right? You're going to have a whole other trial again.
Yes. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of times one error is not going to be enough to result in reversal, but sometimes it is.
Yeah.
And it's an honest mistake, but that's where having some experience comes into play, so that we're not going to cost the county a lot of money to retry it, and we're not going to put the victims through the trauma of having to testify again.
Heather, tell all the folks out there why you think they should vote for you for the 208th.
I think that you should vote for me because I have a very extensive background of criminal law, and I think that the community should refuse to continue to be victimized by our judges. So please vote for me.
Okay.
Hey, somebody on Facebook said judges should make you think. So is that what you feel like it's important to, when you have a decision that people should understand what you're trying to say?
I think what they're trying to say is if you explain a ruling or something
Yeah.
like that, so that people grasp other than just saying ruling, you explain why you're ruling.
Yeah.
What it is.
Well, and really isn't the biggest part about being the judge is you have both sides, and you're not really the mediator. How would you put it? You're making the call, right?
You're the gatekeeper for
Yeah,
what
there you
comes
go.
in and what doesn't come in, and then you are the person that tells the jury what the applicable law is. So it's a very important job, and hopefully all the judges are thinking, but yes.
Because the buck stops with the judge.
It does, yes. At the end of the day, they're the one who's on the line for making the right decision.
Yeah. Hey, thank you all so much for watching this. This is also going to be on our Fox 26 YouTube channel. You can share it and spread the words. Everybody vote. And of course, every judge that, current judge or any judge that wants to talk to us before the election, you get passed.
Yes. We
will invite you with candy.
You'll get a sticker that says I voted and the flavor of your choice.
But and seriously, I think the three ladies that were here today would agree. I was not mean to you, was I? I'm not asking.
That's a rhetorical question.
That's right.
Reputations are fierce. I mean, that's
Yes.
why I'm giving the axe grinding fear monger name.
Yeah, he's the main one, not me. Seriously, if you want to talk to us before the election, we want to hear from you. We will interview you for a Breaking Bond segment. Be sure to watch Breaking Bond tonight on tonight's 9 o'clock newscast. Again, as I said earlier, there are 6 judges that are currently running that we have featured the most in Breaking Bond segments because of decisions that they made. Some of those decisions, unfortunately, turned deadly. So please be sure to watch tonight at 9. Thank you so much. Bye. Say bye, Heather.
Bye.
Bye.